Okay, you're all set.
All right. Good evening and welcome to the February 11th meeting of the City of Kalamazoo Zoning Board of Appeals, a volunteer advisory board appointed by the City Commission. Tonight's meeting is being held electronically and is being streamed live on the city's Facebook page and YouTube channel. Pete, will you please conduct the roll call vote for attendance?
Sure. Chair Logger.
Present?
And you have to say you're in Kalamazoo.
Oh,
Yeah.
present in Kalamazoo.
Yeah, Kalamazoo. Yeah, please say city and state.
You have to be in
Michigan.
Kalamazoo because I'm out of my office, which is in Portage.
And then that's fine. You just need to identify the town and the state you're in. Okay, Mr. Carroll.
I'm present in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Ms. Doan.
Present in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Mr. Flaw.
Present, Portage, Michigan.
Ms. Vanden Hamburg. Okay,
There you go.
Present, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
thank you. I could read your lips too. And Ms. Harrington.
Present in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
All right. Does staff have any announcements or changes from the original agenda?
The only announcement I want to make just for our viewing and listening audience, because this meeting does not have any public hearings, you will not see any phone number listed, nor is there a citizen comment period with this meeting tonight. So I just wanted to make that clear that that's something that you normally do see with the Zoning Board of Appeals, that there is a phone number clearly viewable, and we talk about folks calling in to leave comment for various public hearings, but tonight we are just reviewing the annual report from 2020 and electing officers. Thank you. That's all I've got.
Okay, thanks. And so we'll move on to acceptance of last month's minutes. Are there changes to the minutes? Then can I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
I make a motion for the approval of the minutes.
There's a second and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed, same sign. Okay, the minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is back to you, Pete, the 2020 Annual Zoning Board of Appeal Report. Wait, did we lose Pete?
It was the rapture. Rapture.
I think he might be trying to share his screen. I think he said he was going to do that.
Okay. Am I the only one that dropped out of the meeting there?
You're the only one.
Yep.
Yep, and you're back.
Okay.
You're back just in time. He's frozen again.
And he's gone.
Rapture number 2.
Might be able to proceed with something that we don't need them for, like the election.
Well, let's give one more minute, because otherwise we can table the annual report until next month.
You can keep your video off and you have a better chance.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll keep the video off. Wow. This is my second Zoom call today, and the first one was uneventful.
How do we know this is really Pete, though?
It sounds like him. All right, Pete, we're at the annual report.
All right, we're at the annual report, and I'm sure everybody read that cover to cover, all 3 pages of it. I just wanted to go through, and I'm not going to, go line by line and reiterate this for you, but I kind of wanted to embellish on some things. First I want to acknowledge our new board members. We have Remy Harrington with us, and she interviewed and came on right at the end of the year. And Jeremy Turpinning is listening in tonight. He's our alternate number one, which we haven't had an alternate in, it's been at least a year that we functioned without an alternate, maybe closer to 2 years. As far as, some of the new initiatives, I touched on the report, to utilize the Zoom video conferencing platform. Was a little bit of a learning curve. I was very impressed with how the board came to grips with that. We ended up not having a meeting in March or April, and then by the end of April, there was the pressure and the cases were piling up, and so we ended up having 2 meetings in May. So we started off with a bang using the electronic meeting format. And in addition to that, the natural features protection overlay standards, that was the first installment of the NFP was adopted in May of 2019, but we didn't see really any projects rather come to the Zoning Board of Appeals until 2020. And so that was, definitely, something new, for those that are not familiar with that, especially our listening audience. The Natural Features Protection Ordinance basically sets forth guidelines for developing areas with steep slopes, established woodlands, floodplains, creeks, rivers, lakes. So they're overlay standards. So there's still the underlying zone district. This is just an additional layer of standards that apply to certain protected areas of the city that fall within this. And so the Zoning Board of Appeals is the appeals mechanism for the natural features protection standards. So what we set up was that, when those situations arise where a project is going to be requesting a variance and go before the Zoning Board of Appeals, that developer first go to the Natural Features Protection Review Board to have them review their project. And then the Natural Features Protection Review Board provides a memo and a recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals, because these are standards that some of you may not have worked with in the past. Sometimes they're related to tree and shrub species. Other times they're related to slopes. Like in the case of the Bow in the Clouds Preserve off of Nazareth Road. So I pointed out those in the report, the 2 that we had for natural features protection overlay variances. Bow in the Clouds was one, and then the community of Kalamazoo was the other project where they had certain species of plants that they were trying to plant a variety of native and non-native, but the standards for plantings are very specific, that they're all native plantings. And so there were certain ones that were going to be heavily grazed by the sizable deer population over there, and they wanted to get some substitute non-native plantings in. So when looking at the summary of activities, we had 20 applications, 41 total requests. Obviously, that means we're getting larger, more complex projects that have multiple variances. What does this all mean? When you look at the percentage of the variances granted, and Chair Lager and I talked about this earlier, it sends kind of a mixed message, because some folks look at that and say, well, that's an awfully high percentage of variances being granted by a zoning board of appeals. Normally, a zoning board of appeals denies more than it grants. And yes, that is true in the case of, anybody, because any property owner can apply for a variance. Some communities, as soon as somebody says, comes in with their project and it's reviewed by the planner and they need a variance, the planner just hands them a form for the zoning board of appeals. We sit down and work through, what alternatives there are for a project to avoid, the 1 month delay to go to the zoning board of appeals, the fee, big question mark, whether their variance will actually get granted or not. So, there is a significant amount of working with property owners and developers to alternatives. Hate to use the term discourage, but we definitely make it clear if an applicant or a potential applicant has got a request that is really doesn't have a real strong leg to stand on, or if it's something that's been denied by the zoning board of appeals multiple times in the past, I won't hesitate to let know that, hey, this is really not something that's very favorable in our community. There have been similar variances and they've all been denied. So, I have no problem communicating, clearly to make sure folks are not going in with a false success when they come before the zoning board of appeals. And on the flip side, what is you're seeing in these staff reports we're now writing that there's a lot of, supportive comments from staff for various variance requests. So, so that's the other reason there's the higher percentage of variances being granted is because we've got some very unique projects that are supported by the city. They're bringing great benefits to our community, but they're so unique and different. They just don't fit the mold of the ordinance all the way around, as far as the level of detail our regulations now have. So, and then looking at like trends and patterns. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yep.
Just want to make sure I'm not just talking to myself here. So, for trends and patterns, obviously the ground floor residential uses in commercial zones, you keep seeing that over and over again. And I'm sure you're asking yourselves, why hasn't the city done something about this? We see these time and time again. So that applies to like the CN1 zone, the CO, which is commercial office, that commercial community zone district, which is like, the heavy commercialized strip of Westnedge and Stadium Drive, and then the commercial mixed use zone. So, we have a number of things going on. So first of all, we are hesitant to do a wholesale removal of that. And the reason for it is because there's so many areas of the city, we think it would be counterproductive to the this walkable, dense urban environment that's evolving. We'd like to keep the street front area of the building on the lower level more pedestrian focused with retail shops, restaurants, service type businesses. So like for the downtown zone districts, the D1, D2, and D3, residential is now allowed on the ground floor, but it's not allowed within a certain range of the front building. So it's, so roughly 30 feet back from the front facade of the building has got to be used for some commercial capacity. And then you can have residential uses. So we have this, so this is kind of allowing a large percentage of the ground floor to be used for residential, but still maintaining that lively street presence for small commercial establishments. So that is one thing that has kind of held us back from just wiping that requirement out of the ordinance. And the other thing that's going on is we are systematically doing rezonings. There's areas of commercial neighborhood and commercial community that are being rezoned to live work 1, live work 2. And these new zoning designations allow for residential on the ground floor, with a mix of commercial as well. So, so there's 2 things at play. I think by the end of this year, we're going to have, this pattern ironed out. And I don't think you're going to have any more of those requests coming in, but the Zoning Board of Appeals has really provided that control point, because each project has been a little different that you've seen. That, some of them are, it's a daycare with so many residential units on the ground floor, or it's, so many of them are, mixed use, as we've talked about, but they're not 100% commercial on the ground floor level. So until we, we need to, get that ordinance text right. We need to get certain areas rezoned to one of these newer zoning designations. And then you'll stop seeing those requests coming in. On the urban agriculture, indoor and outdoor growing of crops, I just wanted to touch on that briefly. Remy Harrington has some properties that are involved with this, and was before the board in the past. But there's clearly a trend that's continuing to grow. Not the right word to use, but expand. And communities need to be more flexible for community gardens, the ability to grow crops, even commercial, growing operations that are done on a smaller scale. And, so what's occurring with our ordinance as we develop Chapter 50 and these new zone districts, agriculture is a land use category for these new zone districts. And it is allowed in a number of those new zone districts, like Live Work 1, Live Work 2, D3, which is Downtown 3, which is the fringe of the downtown. And there's certain development standards that go along with it. But I just wanted to point that out. Short-term rentals, we've had some variances related to those over the last few years. Also variances related to, I guess, what you would call a modified bed and breakfast. We've had situations where the owner of the bed and breakfast lives in one house and uses the adjacent house part of the bed and breakfast. So it's the definition of a bed and breakfast is the owner or operator resides in the detached dwelling where the bed and breakfast operation is located. And so if the owner or operator is in an adjacent dwelling, that does not meet the definition. If there's been a number of requests that have kind of, where folks have been wanting to do a bed and breakfast type operation, but with a slight change from the way it's defined. And in some cases, it's been deemed acceptable to the board. In other cases, it hasn't. We are looking at piecing together an ordinance. We've already done some research, but we realize that short-term rentals need to be adequately addressed in the community. It's looking like that would be like a special use that would go before the Planning Commission in certain zone districts. So we've got to get that ironed out. But yeah, so that's something that's definitely, you're all aware of what's going on in the community. You've heard a lot about VRBOs and Airbnbs, and it's been a little more because of COVID, but there's still a lot of folks utilizing those services out there. And the last one I want to touch on was the sign ordinance. Now, given the situation in 2020 with 19, we had 0 sign variances, which was very unusual. And I think that right there says volumes as to why there was no sign-related variances, because we always have some every single year. But we are in the process of updating that. Christina Anderson has taken the lead, and there will be a draft of that done within the next, I'm just going to say, a couple weeks. So, so later this spring, we'll have a sign ordinance draft moving forward. And there's a number of reasons for that. There's the desire to expand the use of projecting signs. You're probably familiar with some of the variances that came through for the Portage Street corridor near Portage and Washington, Portage and East Stockbridge. Those businesses there was several variances for projecting signs. And there's also been some closer to the downtown, but right now they're only allowed in the downtown proper. So all these other buildings that are built up to the property line along these commercial corridors technically, don't have the permitted allowance of any projecting sign. So, there's things like that we would like to fix. Also, there was the Reed versus Town of Gilbert Supreme Court case, which basically got into the elements of what municipalities can do as far as setting up signage restrictions that are based on content, and meaning that say temporary signs and non-commercial signs, they can't be, you can't regulate signs based on what's written on the sign. You can't say, well, a campaign sign can be 6 square feet, but a garage sale sign can only be 4 square feet, and a real estate sign can only be 4 square feet. So that means you're simply looking at the content on the sign. And there has to be some uniformity to that. So if you're going to allow any sort of temporary sign like that, then they're all going to have to be the same size. And, and Clyde, did I touch on that enough that it made sense there as far as the content-based regulations? So it is a significant piece that's got to be fixed in our ordinance and most sign ordinances across the country. This happened in 2015, the Supreme Court case. We obviously were also kind of biding our time to see if there was any other cases that came up related to this, so that we didn't just our sign ordinance only to have to revise it again. But we are going to get that done in 2021. So am I covering that correctly, Clyde?
I think you are. I'll just say briefly, it was a case that was decided near the end, I think almost the last day of the 2014, 2015 U.S. Supreme Court term. And it kind of snuck up on everybody. There's some interesting concurrences that seem to give at least the impression that there's maybe a little more leeway. But if you read the majority opinions, and that's had the majority support of the court, it seems that we're, as municipalities, we're really put in a difficult place. There is also another strain or line of jurisprudence, and it's called the Central Hudson case, which seems to indicate that, at least in regard to commercial speech, municipalities have a little more flexibility in regulating that type of speech. And there is no case that is kind of reconciled the Central Hudson line of cases with the cases from Reed versus Gilbert. The circuits across the country have tried to do that a little bit. There's a couple of good cases out of the Seventh Circuit, which is Illinois, Indiana. We're in the Sixth Circuit, which is Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee. And that's the law that we have to follow in general. So it's something that municipal attorneys keep their eye on. It's something that occasionally shows up in some of the listserv that I'm involved with. But at this point, I think everybody's said we have to be really careful about regulating, and if it appears you're regulating on the basis of content and is the nature of the type of sign. Is I think Pete did a good example of that. You can't say, well, political signs have to be so in this particular size, it can only be up for a particular period of time when you've got other types of what we'll call yard signs. So if you're going to regulate yard signs, you have to regulate them as a generic group as opposed to specifying for sale signs, garage sale signs, and political signs.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That was much more succinct. I should have just handed that one off to you to begin with. So again, I apologize for not being able to, put anything up on the screen or even show my face right now, but I'm afraid I'm going to drop out of the meeting again. And I'm almost done here. I won't go belabor this too much further. So some staff initiatives I just want to mention. We are reworking the Zoning Board of Appeals application form. So we are attempting to create, essentially there's an application form, and then that's followed by a review sheet that they fill out and actually answer the review criteria. We basically took the review criteria and put it in question form. So we're hoping to draw more information out of the applicants, giving you, the board, something more to work with than an application form and a written statement that might be half a page to a page long, and then a few, diagrams of the project. So we've got that. We're moving our agendas and our reports into what's called Civic Clerk, which is the same format that the city commission meetings are done through. So it's just, so the format of the future agenda packets may look a little different, but it's going to be coming to you the same way in an electronic form. It just allows us to track all our board agendas and post things a whole lot easier if we all use the same software. So virtual meetings, I touched base with Clyde on this earlier today. Virtual meetings right now, there is a order from the governor that allows through March 31st, 2021, continue to hold virtual meetings. Right now, there's no new information on whether that would be extended or if we would need to go into some other direction. And I guess that other direction, just so everybody's aware, it's a project our IT department is working on, which is kind of like a hybrid in-person electronic meeting, meaning with the board members could come together as a group. There might be a limited amount of audience that could physically be in the room with us, and then everybody else would participate electronically. So I have no more details other than that, but there's just, there will be some way to continue to hold public meetings, going forward. We won't just come to a grinding halt. And
Pete, if I may, I can give you a little more. I know that it is a priority for the Michigan Municipal League to see if we can extend the kind of any reason to have an electronic meeting until perhaps the 1st of July or the 1st of August. And they're working with the legislatures certain legislators to move that through. The other aspect of this is that in terms of going into a live meeting, there is the Department of Health and Human Services has issued in late January an order regarding wearing masks and limiting the number of people that can be gather together. And that's basically 10. Now, as the COVID inoculations get better, and if the number of cases continue to trend down as they have in the last couple of weeks, I would expect that when the Department of Health and Human Services order, which expires, I think, on the 22nd of this month, they'll probably issue another one. And I would expect that either one of two things, either they'll kind of maintain the status quo, or like they have with high school sports and some of the other things, like opening up restaurants and bowling alleys and the like, they may open that up a little bit more. So it may be possible, as along the lines that Pete suggested, to have a hybrid meeting where the board itself could gather in one physical place, wearing masks, be socially distant, and then have people come and present their cases electronically. And so that's what we're working on, and that's remains to be seen. It just depends on what the legislature does and what the executive does in terms of their emergency orders governing how many people can gather in one place at any one time.
Thank you, Clyde. And the last thing I'd like to touch on here, this isn't on the agenda packet, but I did send out the review criteria used for use variances and dimensional variances. And I just wanted to, throw the reminder out there that, as a quasi judicial board, your duty is to be looking at case and the facts in front of you and trying to align the facts and information about the project with, the criteria for granting a use variance or a dimensional variance. So whether it's lot size, it's lot shape, like that Harrison Street, the apartment building on the edge of that, the roundabout there at Harrison and Ransom and Gull, with a curved front property line, and they're trying to meet a 0 to 10 building setback from the front property line. Could be there's easements on the property that conflict with building setbacks, topography, existing location of structures, unique circumstances that are related to the land use that's already there, like some businesses, in order to function, they may not really, fit, every aspect of ordinance. We've for, maybe a garage door on the front of a building for a builder to, be able to put equipment in a building and a lot, so there's no way to put the garage on the side of the structure. Yet the ordinance doesn't allow for the loading area to be on the front of the building. So there's a lot of unique circumstances, but I just, it would be, when we get to that point of discussing the variance and asking the applicant questions, just, try to find those things if you, and of course, ask questions. The worst thing you can do is have a question and not ask it, and then leave that hanging out there for yourself. And it might be the same question that somebody else is thinking about, but just hasn't articulated. So, so definitely don't hesitate to ask questions, and, and comments that support, or touch on the review criteria. So we can get those in the finding of fact. Those end up in the meeting minutes. And, if any of these cases, it only happens every once in a while that one of our cases actually, ends up getting appealed to the circuit court, and then they go back and they look at our meeting minutes and, want to see exactly the discussion flowed and what critical and important components of the, the particular project were brought out. So I just wanted to mention that, and it's, keep those sheets handy when you're going through the, the Zoning Board of Appeals cases each month. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and, we can talk about that further. But, okay. So, we do have some variance requests on the March 11th meeting. So next month's meeting, we will definitely be holding a meeting. It's probably, I'd say it's 2, maybe 3 variance requests. So I just want to mention that. Other than that, I'm done with my talk. Is there any questions that you have about what the staff is working on, what happened last year?
No, I don't see any or hear any, Pete. Thanks for that. And thanks for sort of covering that update on both the sign and that first floor dwelling, because yeah, seeing those things repeatedly, it's good to hear what's going on. And again, thanks for the reminder on those review criteria. And I saw you emailed that out today, so it's fresh for everybody. And then I think the one comment I have is, I think this might be the first year that I've seen you or staff, maybe Christina did one too, submit sort of that memo to go along with the case. And whether it's a recommendation or just sort of talking about the project in some way, I found that to be really helpful. So thanks for doing that.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah, that was something on our list to expand the Planning Commission has always had a staff report with each that goes before them. The Zoning Board of Appeals had it years ago, and then for some reason they stopped doing it. And so we had talked for a long time about starting it up and what sort of format to use. It's a little more work on staff's end, but it helps summarize the information better, especially for those applications where the narrative you get is a little difficult to follow. So anyways, yeah, between those staff reports and the new Zoning Board of Appeals application form and review sheets, I think it should make your jobs a little easier.
Thank you. Nice to see. All right, unless there are other questions or comments on that, let's move on to election of officers. Earlier by email, we had circulated with Jeff, who is the vice chair, Christina Doan, who's the secretary, and myself as president, that since I think no one had stepped up saying they wanted to hold one of those officer positions, that each of us would be willing to stay in the same position for another year. So unless we want to have any discussion on that, would someone like to make a motion to approve that slate that I just mentioned? And
I make a motion to approve what Chair Larger suggested.
So let me repeat then the suggestion. So it's me, Matt Lager as chair, Jeff Carroll as vice chair, and Christina Doan as secretary.
Okay.
And that's your motion?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. All right, we've got a slate of officers. And I don't have I lost my agenda here. And with that, I think we are adjourned for the night.
Wait, I have something to say.
Oh, go for it.
Okay, all right. Can we make this off the record?
Well,
Yeah.
No.
No,
We
I don't
can't-
think we can. No, we're in public meeting.
We're in a
Okay.
public meeting.
All right, I'll send an email. I have an idea for something fun, so I will send an email.
All right.
Yeah, just-
No, send it through Pete. So we're making sure we don't run afoul of any Open Meetings Act issues.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, thank you.
yeah,
I
yeah.
have-
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, anytime that there is quorum, which is 4 board members or more, then it's technically a situation that should be a public meeting. And so if you do have something you want to communicate to the whole board, it's best to send it to me, the liaison first, and then I can, communicate with the rest of the board members. If there's something to be disseminated, or if it's something we need to put on the agenda for a public meeting in the future, then I can do that too. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
This is out of order, and I should have asked this question when you called for other questions after after Pete's report. But do we have to do anything special for me to ask a question out of order?
No, if you've got a question about the report, go ahead, or Pete's staff report, go ahead.
Thank you. So Pete mentioned that, and you all know me from the variance that I requested for urban agriculture on a vacant city parcel. I was wondering if there was any process that was going to be established to kind of operationalize other urban agriculture initiatives in the city that city staff were working on, so that the process could be a little bit easier and much more seamless for other people that would be interested in doing the same things. Because I can tell you that the process that I am going through even currently is extraordinarily tedious. So I just wanted to know if there was any plans for it, if there were any plans for that moving forward.
That's a very good question. There is not any special initiative as of right now. But by having agriculture better defined, by allowing it in those zone districts, what it makes possible is that somebody that wants to set up a small scale agriculture operation, they may or may not need site plan review based on the scale of their operation. If it's going to take up most of the property, then they're going to have to go through site plan review, just like you did with your projects. But they're not going to have to go to the zoning board of appeals. They're not going to have to sit down with staff and figure out the, how the variance to be worded and variances if it's plural. It's simply, it just goes through that site plan review process, and then permits are issued. But no, there's nothing other. I cannot think of any special initiatives going on. I don't know all of the grant programs out there and what is, what type of, items that they are, that grant money could be used for. So that's kind of a bigger question. But as far as on the planning side, we've just been able to cut away that special approval layer.
That's helpful. Thank you, Pete.
Yep.
All right. And I think with that, we are adjourned for the night. So have a good evening, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Clyde's already
Bye.
beamed
Thank
himself
you.
up for the night.
That's right.
All right. Night all.
Good night.